If thoughts are things, if it is our thoughts that create our reality, then beliefs are the most important things in our lives. This is so because beliefs represent the underlying structure of the mind, and the wellspring from which all the thoughts that we consider our own arise. Beliefs are also greatly responsible for the range of our perceptions, since they quite naturally create the boundaries that we refer to as ourself. Quite simply, if you truly do not believe that you can see or feel a certain thing, then you will not. Beliefs act very much like a filter, that only allow you to notice certain sense data, while completely ignoring other sense data that may be just as valid, but that does not fit within the scope of your current belief system. An old saying states that the only real difference between people is the size of their cages. Well, beliefs are quite literally the things that define the size and the structure of those cages. It is very important therefore that we examine our beliefs, and that we learn how to change those beliefs that are limiting us in one way or another. Fortunately, and contrary to popular opinion, we can change our beliefs, and we can change them relatively quickly, if we are determined, mentally flexible, and willing to be honest with ourselves. As most know and suspect, beliefs are generally established and become truth in our minds over a long period of time, and through a great deal of repetition. This type of slow belief creation relies on authority figures, your mom and dad, your teachers, the intellectual elite, those in authority, and society at large, repeating things over and over, until our awareness matches what they believe, and what they may also most likely be experiencing themselves. Repetition and time create new neural pathways within the brain, that we then learn to accept and call reality, or undeniable truth. This process can take years, perhaps decades, and it is a constant and continuing process in our lives. But there is also another way that beliefs are created. This method involves a highly powerful emotional experience. While most beliefs are created through the long repetitive method, this second method can completely alter a person's belief structure in a very short period of time. An example of this quick belief creation method could be a highly traumatic event in a person's life, where after experiencing a grave situation, one that creates a huge emotional moment, this particular person no longer sees the world in the same way anymore. What has happened in such a situation is that this dramatic event has stamped a whole new neural pattern in that person's brain, one that alters what they believe and therefore what they experience through their senses, to a great degree. And it doesn't have to be a negative emotion. A deep neural change can also be set off by a very intensely ecstatic emotion as well. The exercises that I mention in some of my books, for example, rely on breaking neural patterns first and foremost, by using deep introspection and pattern breaks. Then, using the intense belief exercises that I describe in those books, you are shown how to create whole new neural pathways over time. These new neural pathways should allow a person to perceive things in a completely different manner, after the new beliefs have become well established. Those new perceptions allow for the experience of different thoughts, and those thoughts further reinforce the new belief, by changing the world of the perceiver in relation to what they now consider to be undeniable truth. In my one book, The Occult Experience, for example, I refer to old schools of mysticism and alchemy. I mention how those old schools realized that they did not need decades to retrain a person's psyche. Certainly the younger that you could start training, the better, but generally speaking they were able to develop and use a fast way to create new belief structures. These old schools are the ones who, to my knowledge, were the first to begin to use the quick belief creation method, in a highly deliberate and structured way. This latter quick belief creation method, that involved an intense emotional, or psychic event, would usually be performed as a structured set of ritualistic ceremonies that differed in scope and content, depending on what school we might be talking about. But the fundamental methods, the technique without the glam, is the technique that I provide in the chapter called The Power of Beliefs in this book. In reference to this exercise, I always advocate that these quick belief creation and belief alteration techniques be approached as a type of intense game. I advocate this because these quick belief creation and alteration methods are a type of intense game of pretend. In order to understand how these techniques work, you can think back, for example, to when you were a child, a time when playing games of pretend was as natural as breathing. Children find it incredibly easy to pretend to do, or be, the most incredible things. They could pretend that they are zombies, that they are astronauts, that they are in the middle of an ocean in some great boat, all the while they are actually sitting on their bed, in their cozy bedroom. As they play these games, it becomes quite evident that children are masters of the art of pretending. Essentially, the techniques that I talk about in my books involve the ability to pretend with the power and focus that only a grown-up mature mind could achieve. This is a type of focused attention that can be referred to as pretending with your whole heart and soul. This can sound a little cryptic, or perhaps intense to some, so I ask those that are having trouble with this intensity to just pretend like a child, which can be much easier to do at first. As you play this pretend game, you may find that your mind will wander, and as a result you will need to make an effort to refocus, and that this effort will cause a tension. This tension will move energy through your system, and this energy movement is essentially the same thing as a mild emotion. When you get comfortable treating this exercise as a game of pretend, you will also be able to read certain physiological changes within yourself, and perhaps you will notice certain psychological intensities, which will most likely manifest as areas of tension in your body. As you make these internal subjective discoveries, you will be able to understand what I mean by believing with your whole heart, and the intense energy that this act can generate. Another way to describe this technique would be to say that you need to believe something, for an allotted time, with every fiber of your being. Another question that I am often asked is, why do I recommend that a break should be taken when doing these quick belief change exercises? These breaks are actually essential, because the brain needs a pause from these intense efforts. When these exercises are done properly, what you are essentially doing is rewiring your brain. In order for this to happen in the best way possible, a person needs to give their brain a rest. Just like when you exercise, you can't exercise every day, or else you will end up damaging your body and losing muscle tone, as opposed to gaining it. The brain needs time to adjust to the new imprints that it is getting. But during this break time, it is also essential that a person keep an eye on themselves. They should study themselves and see if they have certain emotional changes, or if they have certain desires that they did not have before. A person should follow these new impulses that may present themselves, even though another part of the self may have a great desire to ignore these new and scary impulses. This odd limbo period, where contrary impulses may fight one against another, is caused by an internal struggle between new and old beliefs. The trick then becomes ignoring the old desires and impulses that you feel will keep you stuck in your old rut, and instead focus on new desires and impulses that are more in line with what you wish to accomplish. It should then be a prerogative to act and focus the attention on those better desires. You need to do these exercises only within certain time frames, and then relaxing and forgetting about these exercises with one part of yourself, while another part of you keeps an eye out for new emotions, desires, and impulses. You must learn to trust your intuitions. With a slow and repetitive way of creating new beliefs, it could take decades to change your belief structures. With the latter method it could take months or less, but I do suggest that you follow the rules as I set them down in the book, until you become adept in this technique. If you would like to know more about how beliefs can change perception, how to change beliefs quickly, and how to change those beliefs in order to change your personal awareness, I recommend the book, The Occult Experience. I will leave a link to the book in the description below.